Welcome to Light Novel 904, your go-to place for immersive light novel audiobooks. Sit back, relax, and enjoy stories brought to life through voice. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new chapter. Chapter 11. The swordsmanship that felt somewhat unfamiliar yesterday, today already shows the charm of a swordsman. The posture is precise, the movements are swift and decisive, there's a sense of agility. Sword Dao prodigy. At this moment, these 4 words were the only thing that surfaced in Lin Haixier's mind. You know, how many days has Wǔxiá been learning this set of swordsmanship? It would already be good if she could get a grasp of it in half a month. But now she has already become proficient, and there's a rare spirituality in her moves. And that's the key. Although he scolded the young girl harshly yesterday, it was only because he saw the child's talent in Sword Dao, and the hope that she could become a strong swordsman in the future, which made him strict and demanding. He didn't expect that Wǔxiá's performance today would far exceed his expectations. She's definitely a Sword Dao genius, a rare kind. Good, very good. Lin Haixier smiled, nodded repeatedly, and when Wǔxiá finished practicing, he asked, "Did you practice by yourself last night?" Instantly, Wǔxiá thought of Brother Hao's guidance, but then she remembered his stern advice and warnings, hence she gently nodded. Lin Haixier was not surprised. If she hadn't put in the effort last night, she wouldn't have been able to perform like this today. But having progressed so rapidly after just one night of practice, this was what was truly pleasing. "This swordsmanship is a bit too simple for you. Today I'll teach you higher-level swordsmanship," Lin Haixier said. The previous one was only a low-level swordsmanship. He had no right to enter the Lai family's listening ring tower, and he wasn't qualified to teach the higher-level swordsmanship, let alone the supreme-level swordsmanship listed there, to the young girl before him. Unless it was by the instruction of Lai Hao's parents, even the current Lai Hao wasn't qualified. He was still too young to lead the family. Wǔxiá nodded. An adult and a child, they began practicing a new swordsmanship in the courtyard again. One teaching, the other learning. Lai Hao looked on for a moment, feeling a bit bored, then continued to ponder his own chess strategy. With black and white pieces in his hands, he flipped them between his fingers, gently rubbing them, while his mind was occupied with thinking about the chess manuals. Time passed unnoticed in this courtyard. During the day, Lai Hao stared blankly at the chessboard by himself. In the evenings, he occasionally offered guidance to Wǔxiá, correcting some of her minor mistakes. Wǔxiá's rapid progress in Sword Dao elated Lin Haixier. Months later, within Pyroxy courtyard, Lai Hao stood silently in the crowd, watching an elderly man with an immortal demeanor take the 8-year-old Lai Wǔxiá away for cultivation. Fifth Lady tearfully said her goodbyes, reminding Xuan'er to eat well, behave well, and sleep well. Lai Hao remembered, when he was still in swaddling clothes, this young girl clung to his mother's pants, sizing him up with her shining bright eyes. Fifth Lady had 3 children, 2 girls, and 1 boy. This was her eldest daughter. At the age of 5, during the bone evaluation, she showed a 9th grade battle physique, and the Lai family hailed another prodigy. Now, having exhibited extremely high talent in cultivation, she's been noticed by an expert, who has taken her on as a disciple. This scenario, so familiar to Lai Hao, he had witnessed it 2 years ago as well. That time it was Li Yuron's child, led away by a bald monk reciting Buddhist scriptures. Clearly, that person was from Mount Wuling. In the Lai family, those with exceptional talent usually enter these top forces for cultivation, which is also one way for top forces to extend their connections. As for those with lesser talent, like the second lady's second son, who only had a 7th grade battle physique, though he was also considered a genius, he was clearly a cut below those prodigies and would study at Qingzhou City's Tan Palace Academy. Compared to Fifth Lady's maternal feelings, Lai Wǔxiá's young face showed maturity, like a little adult, calmly nodding, reminding her mother to take care of her health, and her father as well. Subsequently, the young girl's gaze swept over the courtyard, looking at everyone in turn. As she passed Lai Hao, she gave him a brief glance, already having little impression of him. Amongst the 3rd generation in the family, those whom her mother frequently mentioned to her were only a few with exceptional talent. For example, the second lady's child, Lai Kaifeng, was the target she was chasing. The others, she barely took notice of. Immersed in the world of martial arts, the words of her mother, the martial instructors, and the servants had influenced her from a young age. Despite her youth, her mind had matured, and she had a sharpness in her eyes, with aspirations and goals to pursue the pinnacle of martial arts. Saying farewell to her parents, accompanied by the well wishes of the crowd, the young girl left with the Taoist. When they would meet again, it would probably be years later when she returned to the family with a famed reputation. Life settled back into calm. In these peaceful days, Lai Hao slowly returned to playing chess by himself. But now, he wasn't playing for experience, but rather to purely contemplate each game. He was trying to overcome himself. When playing white, he would switch his thinking to white, and when playing black, he would switch to black. Although the process was a bit difficult, it felt like a challenge. Enjoyment was found in the struggle against oneself. In this world, where entertainment was scarce, Lai Hao gradually grew fond of this kind of focus on something, especially when it also offered the fun of a challenge. Therefore, the maids would occasionally be startled by the young master's sudden outbursts. For example, while quietly eating, he would suddenly shout out, "Ah, that move should have been placed there." with a look of regret. Sometimes he would point to a flower bed and ask the maids beside him, "Do you see those flowers? Don't they resemble a chessboard?" The maids, they didn't understand, not at all. But if the young master said so, then it must be so. After all, he was the young master of the house, so what else could they do but agree? Chapter 12. By the time Lai Hao was 6, Lin Haixier found him and said he wanted to teach him techniques. He moved a weapon rack over and let Lai Hao choose and practice with each weapon, just like he had done for Bayan Ruxu before. However, considering that Lai Hao's physique wasn't as top-notch as Bayan Ruxu's, he decided to delay it for a year to avoid practicing too early and negatively affecting bone development. Only then did Lai Hao realize that this strong figure from the military was lingering in the mansion just to teach him techniques. "I thought I couldn't cultivate." Lai Hao dragged out of bed early in the morning, yawning, just wanted to crawl back into bed. First, practice the techniques. If someday the commander finds a way to help you open your meridians, you can start cultivating immediately without falling behind, Lin Haixier said. This was his plan: practice first, be prepared. What if he could cultivate in the future? Then it would be useful. What if it doesn't work? Lai Hao asked. You'd be idle anyway, Lin Haixier said indifferently. Lai Hao felt like vomiting blood. What kind of response was that? Being idle is surely better than being overworked. But Lin Haixier had clearly made up his mind, and no matter how much Lai Hao argued, it was futile. Finally, with a stern face, Lin Haixier took out a bamboo stick and threatened to hit him if he didn't obey. Lai Hao wasn't afraid of pain, after all, given his current physical strength. Unless Lin Haixier really hit hard, it was nothing more than tickling. But seeing the other party taking it so seriously, he decided to avoid the confrontation for the time being. Lai Hao picked up the weapons and practiced with each, just going through the motions, handling the saber, spear, staff, and stick without any real form. When he got to the sword, the little girl was waiting with eager anticipation, clenching her little fist and encouraging, "Brother Hao, go for it." Lai Hao was speechless, casually swinging the sword a few times and finishing hurriedly. Lin Haixier's face darkened, seemingly seeing through the little guy's thoughts, and said, "None of these weapons pleased me today with your practice. You're not allowed to rest, and you're not allowed to touch that damned chessboard again." Lin, Lai Hao wailed. "Practice." Lin Haixier gritted his teeth, ignoring Lai Hao's pleas. Lai Hao picked up a saber and started to play with it, but his mind wasn't on cultivation. Although he appeared serious, there was no method to his movements. Seeing Lai Hao take an interest in the saber, Lin Haixier began to teach him move by move, starting with the simplest stances. Seeing how serious he was, Lai Hao dared not practice at all. If Lin Haixier saw any promise or hope, he would be inspired daily, and there'd be no peace for Lai Hao. So, as Lin Haixier taught, Lai Hao kept nodding, claiming he understood. As soon as the saber was in hand, it was all over the place again. It was as if his hands and feet were saying, "Understand my foot." An afternoon passed, and Lin Haixier felt like cursing too. He couldn't even get the most basic saber technique right. Did this boy lack any martial arts insight at all? He couldn't help but think of certain geniuses. Some people are extremely talented in one area, but completely clueless in others, even worse than average people. And it seemed Lai Hao was just this type. Unfortunately, his talent was in the wrong area. Chess, what a worthless thing. Lin Haixier even began to hate the fact that someone ever invented such a thing. It was infuriating. But after the hatred passed, sadness filled him. Was he truly unable to help the young master? He hated his own incompetence, his inability to repay the commander's kindness. After forcing Lai Hao to practice for half a month, Lin Haixier finally despaired and gave up. He told Lai Hao that recent changes in the war in northern Yan meant he would have to leave soon. Lai Hao looked at the man and knew he had given up hope. During this time, seeing the man's grief, Lai Hao felt both touched and ashamed. The other party hated the chessboard, hated their own inability to teach, but never once hated Lai Hao. Lin, do you think a person who can't cultivate martial arts, if they go down the path of body refinement and combine it with techniques, can become an expert? Sitting in the courtyard, Lai Hao looked at the man drinking beside him and asked. Lin Haixier put the wine aside, thought for a moment, and said with utmost certainty, "Yes." He then continued, "I have seen experts in the military with tremendous physical strength. Their spear techniques were virtually perfect. They could be considered among the strong." He turned his head to look at Lai Hao, yet his gaze quickly dimmed. "Young master, I know you are intelligent and can endure hardship. If you go down the path of body refinement, you will surely manage." But your comprehension, he didn't finish, feeling a deep sense of sorrow. The reason he had let Lai Hao practice techniques was with this in mind. Lai Hao looked at him with surprise and said, "I sleep till the sun is up high every day. Do you think I can endure hardships?" Lin Haixier shook his head slightly, a bitter smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. "I have seen how you play chess. I know you can endure hardships. It's just that you don't like to." From Lai Hao, he saw the potential to become a top expert. That was intelligence, mindset, diligence. But the only things missing were the innate talent for martial arts and comprehension of martial arts. These two were precisely the ticket to the world of martial arts. Without entering the gate, how could one talk about a superior seat? This also resulted in the abundant cultivation resources in Divine General Mansion being piled up in front of Lai Hao but amounting to nothing more than an empty mountain. Hearing Lin Haixier's words, Lai Hao felt a bit astonished, turned his head and glanced at the man, then fell into silence again. As the night wind swept through, one continued to drink while the other silently watched the night sky, as if a shooting star streaked across whose falling star was that. 2 months later, Lin Haixier was leaving, saying his formal goodbyes to Lai Hao. Lai Hao waited for him in the inner courtyard, the vast yard empty. He had the servants of the inner courtyard withdraw to the outer courtyard, leaving only him to see Lin off. Do you find it too quiet, Uncle Lin? Lai Hao, with hands clasped behind his back, asked, with a smile. Lin Haixier sighed lightly and said, I don't care for these superficial things. As for you, take good care of Zither. That girl has an extremely high talent for swordplay. She will surely achieve great accomplishments in the future. Treat her well, and she will protect you one day. At this moment, his eyes held a mix of complexity, size, and acceptance. He had completely given up on the idea of Lai Hao learning martial arts. He had come to Divine General Mansion full of expectations and passion, hoping to use all his heart to properly mentor the young son of the commander, to repay a debt of gratitude. Now, he was leaving full of regrets and feeling desolate, a bit sad in his heart. Lai Hao smiled faintly and said, Uncle Lin, I don't have much to give you upon our meeting, but since you're leaving today, let me give you a small gift. I don't need any gift, nor do I have the face to accept one. You just need to be well, said Lin Haixier, feeling somewhat comforted, but uninterested in the gift mentioned by Lai Hao, for he lacked nothing. Lai Hao didn't speak, simply walking slowly towards the weapon rack. Lin Haixier was taken aback, watching him with confusion. Then he saw Lai Hao slowly draw a sword from the rack. This sword is for you, Uncle Lin. I am grateful for your guidance, Lai Hao said softly. Then the sword moved. Its posture was graceful like snowflakes, and the sword in his hand shone like the surging waves of an endless sea, instantly cast a myriad intricate and beautiful sword blossoms, luxurious to the extreme. The ultimate, endless sea, tidal sword skill. At that moment, the brilliant and dazzling sword light illuminated the entire empty inner courtyard. And it also shone in Lin Haixier's eyes, lighting up the dark and contracted pupils into bright, snowy white. Chapter 13. Lin Haixier finally left. However, unlike the regret and desolation he felt earlier, he left the Divine General Mansion nearly running, filled with an excitement that made his heart leap. He wanted to report the incredibly happy news to the commander at the border as quickly as possible. If they knew their child possessed a swordsmanship talent that arose once in 1,000 years, they would surely be immensely surprised and comforted. That one sword, Lin Haixier understood, yet did not fully understand. He recognized that sword technique, the most famous in the Lai family's collection, the endless sea tide sword skill. But compared to those versions of the tide sword skill he had seen, even those at the perfect level, this one was not inferior, and even had a special feeling. After searching his mind, he could only think of 2 words, complete. Even more flawless than perfect. Lin Haixier knew that beyond technical perfection, there was another deeper realm called perfection. But even for those immersed in a technique for decades, it was very hard to reach. Besides hard training, one also needed an extreme talent. Yet, this world-shocking sword had now been displayed by Lai Hao, a 6-year-old child. Even for those dazzling prodigies, to practice a technique to proficiency by the age of 6 was already extremely difficult. Moreover, Lin Haixier had never seen Lai Hao practice swordsmanship, but without doubt, he felt Lai Hao had been secretly practicing. However, whether poor or rich, every day only had 12 hours. In front of time, everyone is equal, and whenever he saw Lai Hao, most of his day consisted of playing chess, playing around, wandering, daydreaming, eating, and drinking. He had never seen him practice swordsmanship, not even touch it. Even if he was secretly working hard, how much time could he possibly squeeze out? He asked Lai Hao, why do you secretly practice swordsmanship? And why conceal this astonishing talent? But Lai Hao just smiled and shook his head without speaking. Lin Haixier thought of much, including those imperial family feuds and intrigues of noble families he had heard about, and he vaguely guessed something. Looking at Lai Hao's quietly smiling face, Lin Haixier felt a twinge in his nose. He understood that if the man from the border returned, this child would not be without support. He could shine brilliantly, yet now he must hide and keep a low profile. If this child had not seen his sincerity, he probably would not have let him see this hidden true face. Thinking of this, Lin Haixier felt quite touched and consoled. This one sword had not only revealed Lai Hao's talent in swordsmanship to Lin Haixier, but, combining it with Lai Hao's usual manner of speaking, had also made him truly understand how smart this child really was. Lin Haixier left in a hurry, so much so that when he passed the front courtyard, he didn't even greet Wǔxiá. With Lin Haixier's departure, the courtyard returned to its usual tranquility. But now, being 6 years old, Lai Hao needed to get up early every day to go to Eternal Spring Court to pay his respects to his aunt, which was a matter of etiquette. The purpose of this etiquette was to cultivate from an early age respect for teachers and the resolve to repay kindness. Wǔxiá, as Lai Hao's fiancée since childhood, almost considered a member of the Lai family, naturally had to accompany him in paying these respects. During these morning visits, it was inevitable to run into other children from various courtyards, though there were only 4 or 5 of them. All were around Lai Hao's age. For instance, the second son and youngest daughter of 5th lady, the orphan son of 6th lady, the son and daughter of 8th Lady. The other children, either like Lai Kanfeng and Lai Wuxiang with exceptional talent taken away by famous teachers, or older, enlisting in the military to strive for a career in the army. Like the son and daughter of the aunt, both in their 20s, serving as junior generals in the army, who would occasionally return if there was no warfare. But as members of the Lai family, they had military discipline ingrained in their bones, strictly following it, thus the aunt barely saw her children throughout the year. After the morning respects, Lai Hao and Bain Ruxi were invited by the aunt, He Jianlin, to enjoy the nutritious breakfast she had prepared. After chatting casually with the dignified and graceful aunt for a while, the two small figures, one after the other, wobbled back to their own courtyard. Lai Hao resumed his usual routine of daydreaming about chess. Bain Ruxi practiced her swordsmanship in the courtyard. The high-quality sword technique Lin Haixier had taught her before leaving was enough for her to practice for several years. One would have thought this peaceful and harmonious time would just slowly continue to pass. Until several days later, a sudden message drastically returned to the Divine General Mansion. Lin Haixier had come back. A warrior enveloped in heavy armor, with a robust body and a cold gaze, had brought Lin Haixier back, but only brought back one hand. When Lai Hao heard the news from Zhao, he was stunned. The chess piece in his hand fell to the ground, but normally, his eyes were only for chess pieces, yet now, he didn't even glance at it. He didn't bother to put his boots on, and barefooted, he dashed out and rushed into the eternal spring court. The maid at the door meant to report his arrival, but Lai Hao had already dashed inside. Then, he saw within the main hall of the eternal spring court, where he usually paid his respects in the morning, a soldier kneeling on one knee. Lai Hao's heart trembled, and looking past the soldier, he saw a piece of red cloth on the ground in front of him, upon which lay a hand. At the point of severance, it looked torn, the flesh mangled and uneven. Wrapped in a blue sleeve, this was the clothing Lin Haixier wore when he left. This hand had, just a few days ago, tousled the little girl's hair. In his ear, this soldier was reporting to He Jianlin, Lin was ambushed by demons lurking on the road to Northern Yan while passing through the national highway of Kai State. The stalemate on the Northern Yan battlefield led to demons infiltrating various cities of Northern Yan, attempting to disperse our army's forces, with other states also experiencing frequent demon attacks. Stop for a moment. He Jianlin interrupted the soldier. She was slightly distracted, watching Lai Hao, who rushed into the hall barefoot and in haste. Then, thinking of something, a sigh appeared in her eyes as she instructed Xu Jin beside her, "Take the arm away for now." "Yes." Xu Jin nodded gently, and then looked up at Lai Hao, who had rushed in. She was quite familiar with this little fellow, and knew that the owner of this arm had been one of Lai Hao's mentors in Foundation establishment. However, in a general's manner, she had long been accustomed to life and death separations, and apart from a silent sigh, she felt little else. As Xu Jin approached, Lai Hao stepped forward, blocking her path. Ignoring her astonished expression, Lai Hao turned around and stared intently at the soldier. "Which demon killed Uncle Lin?" The soldier looked up and saw a little boy of about the same height as his kneeling figure, staring at him with a face full of anger. Those eyes were exceedingly cold and furious, as if they did not belong to a child. Recognizing from the jade pendant hanging by his waist this was a member of the Lai family, though he did not know which branch, he immediately reported truthfully. It was a Millennium Great Demon of the Fourth Realm, leading several demons in an assault, dismembering Lin and consuming him. By the time the city defender from Kai State arrived, only this arm was left, consumed. Lai Hao's mind roared like thunder. His eyes suddenly reddened, his blood seemed to flow backward, rushing to his head. He could scarcely imagine the scene, how cruel it must have been. Having come to this world, and resided in the Divine General Mansion, though he had heard quite a bit about demons from his surroundings, he had never truly seen one. Although he knew the battlefields were brutal, this was the first time he was facing this harsh reality so directly. "Does that demon have a name?" Lai Hao asked in a low voice. The soldier replied, "Yes, that demon resides outside the city of Kai State, and has self-proclaimed the title Tiger Robe Immortal." Lai Hao silently engraved this name into his memory, a surge of indescribable killing intent welling up in his heart, but he controlled his emotions and asked no further, merely turning around, picking up the red cloth from the ground, and covering the arm properly. Then, Lai Hao looked up at the family head. "Fifth Lady, I have taken Uncle Lin's hand back. Excuse my rudeness today, please don't be upset." Having spoken, he then turned around holding the arm, and left barefoot. He Jianlin's eyes flickered slightly. From Lai Hao's actions, she sensed something unusual, seldom seen in the boy, an indication that he was more mature and astute than she thought. "Xu Jin, bring Cheng Jai's boots for Hao," He Jianlin instructed. Xu Jin nodded, went to the side room to find the boots, and just as she was rushing out of the courtyard, she saw that the small figure had already gone far, disappearing from view. Back at mountain and river courtyard, Lai Hao found a spot and buried the arm. Then he fetched a wooden plaque, carved Lin Haixier on it, and placed it into the soil. He instructed Zhao, "Cordon off this area. No one is to step here." When Zhao learned that what was buried was Lin Haixier's remaining arm, he quickly advised, "Young master, this is the family head's courtyard. We shouldn't bury remains here. We have a heroes' cemetery for burial of war heroes. Let's take Colonel Lin there. Let's prepare a ceremonial grave there for Uncle Lin." Lai Hao shook his head slightly, surveying the courtyard. this vast mountain and river courtyard can accommodate Uncle Lin's hand. Young Master Zhao was about to continue. Lai Hao stopped him, leaving him no choice but to give up. Make sure to provide for Uncle Lin's family well, Lai Hao said to Zhao. Zhao replied, as a military man, the northern Yan side should already be aware and will handle his family situation properly. That is there, this is here. Lai Hao glanced at Zhao. You should understand what I mean. Zhao paused and nodded slightly. I understand. The death of Lin Hexer, much like a small stone thrown into the bottom of a lake, caused little more than a ripple within the divine general mansion. Life continued as usual in the other courtyards, but within mountain and river courtyard, Lai Hao became even more engrossed in chess, even neglecting Bayan Ruxu's sword practice. He didn't tell the little girl about Uncle Lin to spare her the sorrow. Time flew by. One day, Lai Hao woke from his sleep, wherein he had been playing chess with Uncle Lin. Suddenly, a fierce tiger rushed in from outside the chessboard, knocking it over and pinning Lin Hexer to the ground by his neck. He sat up in bed, gasping for air. The little girl by his side woke up disturbed, her eyes sleepy as she rubbed her eyes, and asked, Brother Hao, what's wrong? Lai Hao came to his senses and shook his head. It's nothing. As the little girl fell asleep again, Lai Hao covered her with the blanket that had slipped aside, then sat up and went to the window. Under the moonlight, words suddenly appeared before Lai Hao's eyes. You've comprehended the spirit of chess. Chapter 14. Seeing the prompt, Lai Hao's heart did not overflow with too much joy. He had long cast aside utilitarian desires, focusing wholeheartedly on the game, and it was precisely because of this that he possessed a chess Tao state of mind. To use chess Tao as a tool for practicing martial arts, a concept he once held, was now something he could not accept. Even so, a part of him felt an impulse to directly invest these skill points into chess Tao. However, that severed arm, the man who drank wine, made him restrain such thoughts. Playing chess was indeed important, the thing he loved doing now. But there were some things he had to do, such as tearing the tiger robe immortal into thousands of pieces. Nevertheless, that was a great demon of the fourth realm, and getting to the fourth realm was not something that could be achieved overnight. The only thing he could do now was to grow up quickly. Chess Tao state of mind was a state of mind, a condition. After obtaining the chess Tao state of mind, Lai Hao spent the following days in his small courtyard busily immersed in chess. But now, he was not merely chasing the bit of experience one gets at the end of a game, he was truly enjoying every bit of the chess playing process. The ingenuity of every move, the layout, the contemplation, all deeply fascinated him, like playing a fun game totally absorbed, with no desire to stop. Whether eating, sleeping, or watching the little girl train in swordsmanship, his mind was filled with thoughts of chess. This made Lai Hao lose interest in almost everything other than chess. One day, Xu Jian from Eternal Spring Court brought news that the matriarch had invited Bayan Ruxu to join the training facility of Divine General Mansion. It was the place where the descendants of the Lai family cultivated. After turning 6, if one hadn't been taken in by a famous mountain, they would go to train at the facility, taught by retired strongmen from the military of the Lai family. Lai Hao agreed. Although he could teach the little girl, he was currently skilled only in swordsmanship. Besides sword practice, the facility also offered cultivation training and vast knowledge of martial arts, including insights into the outside world, aiming at fostering well-rounded individuals. Since that day, each morning after paying respect to the matriarch, Lai Hao would go his separate way from the little girl at Eternal Spring Court, he returning to mountain and river courtyard, and she being sent off to the training facility. In the training facility, aside from the direct descendants of the Lai family, there were also offshoot relatives and children, making for a significant number, dozens of individuals. Among them, only 5 were direct descendants, the same few who would pay morning respect to the matriarch with Lai Hao. Bayan Ruxu also received the treatment of a direct descendant at the training facility because she was Lai Hao's fiancée, half a member of the Lai family. The descendants were like stars holding the moon in the training facility, their status much higher than the others. Similarly, for foundation establishment and blood-melting cultivation resources, they were at least a level above the others. Therefore, the disparity in martial arts talent between direct descendants and the others was significant. This resulted in, apart from a few just sensible direct line youngsters, most of the other relatives being teenagers in their mid-teens, with talents ranging around 4 to 6 ranks, considered average, but capable of holding down a territory in the future. Those relatives with talent reaching the 7th rank would be given focused cultivation, enjoying resources close to those of direct descendants. After entering the training facility, Bayan Ruxu officially stepped onto the path of cultivation. That's when the terror of her 9-ranked battle body became evident. In just a few months, Lai Hao saw the little girl advancing to the 4th level of the Power Passage realm. She was breaking through a minor realm nearly every month, her progress so swift it seemed as effortless as eating and drinking. While this was inseparable from the lavish cultivation resources of the Lai family, poured into her without reservation, her martial arts talent was like a sponge, and the ability to absorb so much was also a skill. And those teenagers in the training facility were still lingering around the 8th or 9th level of the Power Passage realm. It was estimated that, in another half a year, the little girl would catch up to them. As for Lai Hao, he continued to play chess day after day, undisturbed in the courtyard, and the matriarch did not request his attendance at the training facility. Lai Hao could see that the matriarch did not wish for him, as a direct descendant, to be humiliated in the training facility. The training facility was not only for education, but also to incite the children and teenagers' zeal for cultivation through a range in sparring and competition. Someone like Lai Hao, without any martial arts talent, would inevitably suffer if placed among them. Some of the kids were tactless in speech, and it was unavoidable to provoke conflicts that might reach the adults, which would not look good. As the matriarch of Divine General Mansion, she sought peace and quiet, and Lai Hao was content with this arrangement, enjoying the leisure. After all, for him, practicing martial arts was a waste of time. He had no interest in squabbling with those teenagers, too dull. After playing so many games, haven't you learned anything? It's the same move that lost you 3 games already. Lai Hao scolded the house servant playing chess in front of him. Startled, the servant jumped up, standing with his hands hanging down like a quivering quail, and said, "Young master, please calm your anger." By now, Lai Hao already had the bearing of a young master. They no longer dared to treat him like a child, taking his words lightly. "Your mind is not focused on the game at all. What are you thinking about?" Lai Hao said angrily. The servant inwardly complained, as he had always played this way, but the young master had never cared before. Instead, the games ended quickly, and the young master seemed happy about it. But recently, it had changed. If the game was played poorly, the young master would get upset, causing the servant much distress. "The two of you play terribly. You've been my opponents for so long and haven't improved a bit," Lai Hao said, irritated. The servant hastily pleaded for forgiveness, while the other, as if remembering something, stealthily glanced at Lai Hao and said, "Young master, I do know someone who plays chess. He's a third-ranked house servant newly joined here." "Oh?" Lai Hao raised an eyebrow and asked, "Where is he?" "In the woodshed, handling the chopping of firewood." "Then what are we waiting for? Call him over so I can test him," Lai Hao instantly said. "All right, young master," the house servant said joyfully, immediately taking his leave. Before long, a lean and skinny young man, dressed in servant's clothes, was brought before Lai Hao. "What are you staring at? Haven't you seen the young master?" "Ah, yes, may the young master have peace." The lean young man hurriedly knelt down. Lai Hao waved his hand slightly for the young man to rise and speak, pointing at the chessboard. "I hear you play chess. Play a game with me and let's see how well you do. If you're good, from now on, you'll stay at Mountain and River Courtyard as a top-ranked house servant, by my side." The lean young man clearly hadn't expected such a stroke of good fortune to fall upon him, and was dumbstruck, then immediately exclaimed with joy, "Thank you, young master, thank you." After saying this, he wiped his hands on his clothes and sat down in front of the chessboard. Soon a game was laid out, and Lai Hao took the white pieces in hand. Several moves into the game, Lai Hao was already delighted. This skinny young man really could play chess, and he had quite some technique. Lai Hao started to take it seriously too, making his moves without mercy. In just a short while, the young man's face turned pale, his forehead was beading with sweat, and fear could be seen in his eyes. In the end, his hand trembling slightly, he slumped low, staring at the chessboard in front of him, then at Lai Hao, unable to believe it. Such a young child, so deeply versed in the ways of chess Tao. "I lost," said the lean young man with a complex expression as he stood up, his eyes betraying reluctance and a hint of subtle ferocity. Lai Hao was in a daze. He came to his senses when he heard the young man's words and immediately started laughing. "Good, very good. From now on, you're a top-ranked servant in my courtyard. Just accompany me in chess every day." The lean young man was stunned, looking at Lai Hao in amazement. But I lost." Lai Hao smiled. As soon as the game ended, it had prompted him that he gained experience, a whole 20 points. Normally, when playing chess with the 2 knuckleheads by his side, the most he'd get was 3 points. The difference was simply huge. This also showed that the more skilled the player in a chess match, the more experience he would get, rather than just rushing through game after game purely by volume. If every game yields 20 points, 10 games will be 200. To accumulate 5,000 points, only 250 games would be needed, and even if calculated at 10 games a day, it would only take a month. The more Lai Hao thought about it, the more excited he became, his eyes looking more and more pleased at the lean young man before him. "If you can beat me, I can grant you 10,000 taels of gold," Lai Hao said, encouraging him with a smile. The lean young man was shocked, his body trembling with excitement. Lai Hao told him not to stand there in a daze, and to sit and continue playing while instructing the 2 servants by his side to go prepare his registration and handle the transfer procedures. And so, Lai Hao and the lean young man began a series of matches in the courtyard. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. One night, after dinner, Lai Hao called the lean young man over for another battle. In the bedroom, under the nightlight, 2 figures, one large and one small, were locked in a chess battle on a board. "Young master." As Lai Hao concentrated on plotting his next move, he suddenly heard the lean young man call out to him. But the tone was not the usual one that was slightly flattering and respectful. Instead, there was a strange tranquility to it. Lai Hao looked up in confusion to see a glint of cold light shooting towards him, straight at his face. His pupils shrank, and his body instinctively kicked back, retreating like lightning. Looking back at the chess table, the lean young man's one hand was lying on the board while the other maintained a stabbing gesture with a dagger, his face showing a hint of shock. Obviously, He had not expected that his attack would be dodged by the young master. Lai Hao came back to his senses. Everything had happened too suddenly and without warning. As he was shocked, his eyes swiftly turned icy cold, and he said in a chilling voice, "An assassination." "Who sent you?" A woman from Shuihe courtyard flashed through his mind, but Lai Hao promptly dismissed that thought. After all, he was a cripple without any threat, and it seemed unlikely someone from inside would want to assassinate him. How did he? The Lin young man's mind was in even greater disarray than Lai Hao's, more shocked. Wasn't this child a useless person who couldn't cultivate martial arts? For all those days in the yard, accompanying Lai Hao daily, he indeed had not seen him practice at all, not even once. To know, children of the Lai family were expected to suffer through rough training at the age of 6. Yet, this disabled child spent every day playing chess in his own courtyard, ignored by everyone. The intelligence was not wrong, but it seemed outrageously so. Quickly, the lean young man reacted. His body exploded in movement, displaying a shockingly swift movement technique, lunging directly at Lai Hao. He must not let the child cry out. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness and murderous intent. But on the other side, Lai Hao's thoughts mirrored his. The assassin must not be allowed to cry out, or else too many would be alarmed. Kill. Seeing the onrushing figure, Lai Hao did not dodge. Instead, he suddenly thrust out with his foot. His small frame burst forth like thunder, carrying a faint whistling sound in the action. As he got close, he tilted his head slightly to watch the dagger swipe past his eyes. At the same time, he delivered a punch to the enemy's belly. Lai Hao had never engaged in physical combat with anyone since he had started his path of cultivation. This time, it was almost full power unleashed. A sound as heavy as a sandbag hitting the floor echoed. The lean young man's eyeballs nearly popped out as he was struck, curving like a shrimp and forced to fly backward, crushing in front of the chess table. Lai Hao didn't know how much force was behind his own punch, but given he could lift up a 2-ton rockery, this forceful punch must have carried tens of thousands of pounds. As the young man was repelled, Lai Hao quickly leaped forward. A small hand, like a hawk's claw, grabbed the other's throat, and he said coldly, "Don't make a sound." The lean young man. Chapter 15. What's happening? The lean young man's mind was momentarily muddled, unable to discern who the assassin was. But feeling the tremendous force pressing against his throat, he came to his senses, and looked at the little boy before him in alarm and fear. What kind of monster is this? Barely 7 years old, yet possessing such terrifying strength. Even at the 10th level of perfection in the Power Passage realm, plus the resurgence of the noble Lord's divine blood, it shouldn't be so exaggerated, should it? Who sent you to assassinate me? Lai Hao stared intently at the other party and asked, while various pieces of information surfaced in his mind. Playing chess was a means to approach him, indicating that the other party's purpose in coming to the Divine General Mansion was straightforward to assassinate him. The lean young man was somewhat silent, as the child before him displayed a strength and cognition far beyond that of an ordinary 6-year-old. He had thought he was sent to deal with a useless little thing, only to uncover such terrifying information. You're not a martial arts waste. Hiding your strength, is this your idea, or your old man's arrangement? The lean young man asked, slightly squinting his eyes. Now that the assassination attempt had failed, and he felt the enormous strength at his throat that could crush it at any moment, he knew he had no way out, and became calm. Assassinating the direct bloodline of the Divine General Mansion was a task with very slim chances of survival. It's just a pity that the mission could not be completed. Do you know my father? Lai Hao's eyes flickered slightly. We're joking. The lean young man said coldly, who in the world does not know the martial Marquis Xingwu. Currently, he is stationed at the Frontier Pass, and a few months ago, he gathered martial artists from Jianghu and Northern Yan to assist in suppressing demons, commanding great respect with a single call. Assisting in suppressing demons. Lai Hao furrowed his brows. Could it be that the situation in Northern Yan had become so difficult that they had to rely on the strength of Jianghu martial artists? Are you sent by my stepmother? Lai Hao asked. The lean young man was momentarily stunned, then suddenly realized, a sneer crossing his eyes. You've been the target of assassination. Unexpectedly, even within the iron-blooded Divine General Mansion, there's such decay. No wonder you're pretending to be useless. But speaking of which, I really haven't seen you train. How many hours do you practice every day? I've always been training with you. Lai Hao calmly looked him in the eyes and said, You answer my question first, and then I'll answer yours. That's called an exchange. The lean young man slightly raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but laugh. This child was indeed interesting. Anyway, it's a sure death. You've made me fail my mission and doomed my family. Why should I tell you? The lean young man scoffed lightly. Lai Hao said, Because I can see that you don't want to die. You're also afraid of dying. And there are many ways to die. I can give you a swift death. The lean young man's smile vanished. He fell silent for a moment, and then slowly said, The one who sent me here. Suddenly, his arm quivered, and he threw a punch at Lai Hao's head. Lai Hao slightly tilted his head and easily dodged it, not retaliating, but just looking at him with cold eyes. The lean young man felt a chill as his heart sank. The gap was that big. He, a mighty Yu Chan realm martial artist, seemed to have switched roles with this child. In front of him, he was like a child, completely seen through. The latter's contempt made him dispiritedly retract his hand. You truly are a monster. Spill it, Lai Hao said coldly. You should know that the Lai family is a martial family with countless captives and convicted criminals subjected to interrogation. The methods used are beyond your imagination, impossible to wish for death. If possible, I can give you a swift end. The lean young man's eyes twitched slightly. Of course, he knew the child before him was not lying, and a sense of fear began to grow within him. If I tell you, can you let me go? The lean young man asked with a glimmer of hope, relying on the chance that the child in front of him still had a naive nature. I can, Lai Hao answered. Spurt the lean young man almost coughed up blood. Could you not be so blunt? It's so fake it can't be faked anymore. Do you think I'm a child? He laughed bitterly and said, actually, telling you doesn't matter much. The assassination has failed, and my family won't survive either. I came from Northern Yan, and the one who sent me to kill you is Monarch Bai. Monarch Bai? That's right, one of the 3 great demon gods of Northern Yan with terrifying strength, and also your father's old adversary. The lean young man's eyes were complicated. Your father's a genius with his troops, and the Lai family army is fearless and unstoppably strong. Northern Yan would have fallen long ago. At present, they've managed to hold the front, but Monarch Bai sent me to assassinate you. He wants your death to spread out from the Divine General Mansion, to reach the frontier pass of Northern Yan, to cause great disarray within your father's army. If he leaves the battlefield to return, Northern Yan will be conquered. With that, he looked intently at Lai Hao. No one knew that this child was the key that could affect the life and death of tens of cities and hundreds of thousands of people in Northern Yan. Lai Hao was stunned, so it was because of Northern Yan. The warfare there had actually reached the Divine General Mansion, so far away. Your father commands the battles in Northern Yan. They are battle-hardened with no vulnerabilities, unassailable, and you are their only weak point, the softest spot. The lean young man continued. Only by starting with you can they defeat your parents, make the frontier pass of Northern Yan fall, and let the demon army march straight in. Lai Hao fell silent, digesting the other's words, and after a while, he slowly said, You're of the human race. Why would you work for the demons? The lean young man was slightly stunned, paused for a moment, then looked gloomily at Lai Hao, his eyes filled with jealousy and hatred. Not everyone is as lucky as you. Even if I explained, you wouldn't understand. Is that so? Lai Hao looked at him calmly. Since birth, my parents have been away, and I was betrayed by close relatives. Now, because of my parents, I face assassination. Do you still think my life is good? The lean young man's mouth opened slightly. He was stunned, at a loss for words, and could no longer speak. Lai Hao did not say more, merely stating, I promised you I would grant you a swift death. Heh, you're quite a decent person. The lean young man recovered, forced a mocking smile, and said, No matter what is said, in the end, death is inescapable. He had a hint of fear deep in his eyes. He didn't want to die. He was afraid of dying, or else. Why would he end up taking orders from demons? Lai Hao spoke as if he didn't understand the sarcasm. Actually, I don't want to kill you. Or? The gaunt young man's eyes revealed a cold sneer, clearly not believing him. Because your chess skills are not bad, Lai Hao said seriously. The gaunt young man was stunned. After a while, he came back to his senses, a bitter smile on his face. But the pity is, I've never won against you. Next life then. Lai Hao began to exert force with his palm. In your next life, don't practice martial arts. Just play chess honestly. At least you'll live longer and more at ease. The gaunt young man wanted to struggle, but seeing Lai Hao's indifferent and composed eyes left him in despair. He bitterly said, You really are a strange child. In the end, Lai Hao still pinched him to death. As suffocation set in, the gaunt young man struggled violently again, but to no avail. After dealing with the assassin, Lai Hao remembered that he still didn't know the man's real name, and the name of the house servant the man had used to sneak in was one bestowed by the Lai family. However, it doesn't matter anymore. After the assassin died, Lai Hao summoned the house servant, scaring him half to death. That night, the entire Divine General Mansion was shaken. The lights in each courtyard were lit, and the ladies of each courtyard, already in bed, hurried over in their clothes. Upon seeing the corpse of the assassin lying in front of the chess table, they were all incredibly shocked. How could an assassin infiltrate a place like the Divine General Mansion? He Qianlun's normally graceful and composed demeanour was gone, and she hugged Lai Hao anxiously, touching and looking him over. Are you all right? Aunt, I'm fine, Lai Hao reassured her. After confirming that there were indeed no injuries on Lai Hao, he Qianlun, now reassured, questioned him closely, and Lai Hao relayed the story he had thought up in advance. An assassin attacked, and in a critical moment, an old man intervened and killed him. Afterward, the old man disappeared. Lai Hao thought to himself that since an assassin could infiltrate the Divine General Mansion, making up a story about an old man should also be no problem, right? After all, if you didn't even know about the assassin, then not knowing about other powerful experts is quite normal too, isn't it? After hearing Lai Hao's story, he Jianlin was visibly shaken, immediately conjuring up some speculations. Could it be a military expert sent secretly by the Divine Marshal Marquis? Or is it that elder from the clan? She suppressed the guesses in her heart and never doubted Lai Hao's words. After all, no matter how mature Lai Hao was, he was still a child under 7 years old. And having not stepped onto the path of martial arts, if there were no expert secretly protecting him, he would surely have died without question. He Jianlin then asked Zhu Jian to take Lai Hao and the little girl Bayan Ruxi to rest at the Eternal Spring Court first, to recover from the shock. Meanwhile, she sat in the Grand Hall of the Mountain and River Courtyard, called over the house servant who had accompanied Lai Hao while he played chess, and the first house servant who had been startled awake by Lai Hao's call, questioning them carefully in the yard. At the same time, she summoned the mansion's experts to examine the corpse of the assassin. It wasn't long before the entire course of events was learned from the house servants. When the assassin entered the mansion, how he revealed his talent in chess, performed in front of the mountain and river courtyard servants, and ingratiated himself with them, and so on. Clearly, the other party had gathered information about Lai Hao, deliberately approaching him by playing chess, with everything leaving traces to follow. Later in the night, the examination results of the corpse were also out. The assassin was astonishingly at the Zhuqian realm, roughly between the 3rd and 4th levels. This level of cultivation, thrown out into the world, would be considered quite decent for a knight-errant, capable of upholding justice in Jianghu and gaining a bit of fame. However, in the Divine General Mansion, where powerful individuals abounded, it would be a very ordinary existence. Nevertheless, to kill a 6-year-old child, this level of cultivation was more than enough, even like using a cleaver to kill a mosquito, excessively overkill. Moreover, the assassin had consumed some kind of special pill that sealed his own sense of Kai, which is why no one had detected him. Hearing this result, the ladies of the courtyards all felt chills of fear in waves. If the target of the assassin had not been Lai Hao, but their own children, they would undoubtedly have faced certain death. The sudden rise of a Zhuqian realm killer beside a child was terrifying. Li Yurong, upon hearing the results of the examination, slowly let go of the slight suspicion and speculation that had crossed her mind. Even if Lai Hao's divine blood had not been ruined, it was not possible for him to kill the assassin on his own. It seemed that the couple, although stationed at the frontier pass, had made thorough preparations for their son. Realizing this, she felt secretly apprehensive. The matter of her drugging should have gone unnoticed since it took place in the Shuihu courtyard. And she also had formidable experts in her own courtyard. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one. Until next time, happy listening and stay lost in the story.